And I'm glad to speak also on our Labour motion on the cost of living, and this is indeed a timely motion. As my colleagues Jed Nash and Alan Kelly have pointed out, this is an issue that affects everyone across Ireland today. And as we're moving into a new phase with the pandemic, and all of us are, I think, cautiously optimistic as we've seen the lifting of most restrictions at the end of last week, nonetheless, I think what's coming into stark focus now is the reality of increased costs for so many families, so many individuals, so many households across the country. And I think what we've learnt through this pandemic is that the old way of doing politics simply isn't good enough anymore, that we need to ensure that we build on those collective values of solidarity that saw us through the toughest times in the pandemic, that we build on what are social democratic and socialist principles around greater roles for the state in intervening to address growing inequalities. And I was very struck by the Oxfam figures showing the wealth of Ireland's 9 billionaires has increased by nearly 60% since March 2020, while for most people wages have stagnated while prices have increased. And this at a time of global insecurity, with Russian troops massing on the border in Ukraine and consequent consequences that Jed Nash has spelt out that we all are very aware of in terms of rising prices for energy and indeed serious implications for many of those in manufacturing and in other sectors across Ireland. What I want to focus on is two areas, Minister, which your government can make a real difference on if you address them, if you take up the mantle, if you take up the challenge of public sector investment, of greater investment in public services and greater, more targeted measures to address these two areas where, particularly in my own constituency in Dublin Bay South, but across the country, we're seeing people are really being squeezed. On childcare, we're seeing this as a significant issue, massive childcare costs. Ireland has the second highest household spend on childcare in the OECD. In my own constituency, I hear daily and weekly from couples and from individuals who are scrambling to make ends meet and to meet childcare costs. And yet we know that across the sector, while parents are facing unaffordable fees, staff are being paid at below poverty level in many cases, and many are seeking to leave the sector. Many childcare and early years professionals simply unable to afford to continue to work in that sector. And indeed, childcare providers leaving the market, leaving the provision of the service, because again, they're not getting the supports. What I have called for is a Donna O'Malley moment, where this government takes up what Labour women have called for in our Equal Early Years campaign, where we take up the challenge and where we bring into place a proper, universal, public, community-run childcare system that is affordable for parents and that provides good quality childcare with good supports and recognitions for those who are childcare professionals and early years educators too. And this must be done, Minister. And yet we're seeing from Minister O'Gorman promises on reforms, but no delivery, and parents still facing these high fees. And then on housing, on the cost of housing, and in particular in my own constituency, where 44% of all households are in the private rental sector. Again, we're seeing unaffordable hikes in rents, and the government failing to take action on progressing the bill that myself and Senator Rebecca Moynihan pioneered and that we debated in the Dáil in September, which would have, among other things, frozen rents for a 3-year period. And our Renters' Rights Bill would have brought in significant positive reforms for those renting and would have sought to address this really serious cost and this really serious increase that so many families and individuals are facing across the country. Minister, what we want to see in this motion is a better Ireland than we have seen to date. We want to see an Ireland in which those collective principles of solidarity are built upon, in which the state takes up the challenge of investment in public services, and in which targeted measures are introduced by your government without delay to address rising costs and rising prices, and in particular to target childcare and rent costs, which are really crippling so many families.